Joe Rogan has called Max Holloway's knockout of Justin Gaethje the greatest knockout in history. Okay, now, that is huge. That's huge. How do you become the greatest knockout in history? I mean, do you guys know that? Before you roll your eyes and go, well, you can't do it. Oh, yes, you can. The same way you become the GOAT. The exact same way. Popular opinion. That's it. So now when you have the most popular guy who has a respected opinion that tosses that out, I mean, we don't even have a conversation. We don't have a conversation until somebody argues with Joe. If Joe made the statement, that's the way it is, unless somebody argues. Now, if they argue, they bring their argument forward, and a guy like me talks about it, and you guys make your decision. That's exactly how these things get done. This is exactly how legacy is formed. There is no other way. Is it the greatest knockout ever? Well, let's start with making the case for it. Let's back Joe up. Now, if you guys watched Joe say this, perhaps he did what I'm about to do, and I don't want you to think I'm a rip-off artist. I just saw that Joe said it. I don't actually know any more than that. So if Joe told you about how dramatic it was, if he told you about the combination and then coming upstairs, using the absolute sweetest of the sweet science in an MMA situation, see, it's very rare to do. If I had a little room and I had a partner, I could really show you guys. But in boxing, when you go watch boxing, why don't you see that in MMA? Let me just give you a couple examples. Like if you ever bring a boxing guy to MMA as his first practice, there's going to be the boxing coach who can work on that element with you. He's going to look around the room and just go, oh my God, you guys just don't know what you're doing. Every time, 100% of the time. Hey, well, what do you mean I don't know what I'm doing? Hey, I'm watching. You don't use a jab. The jab is the most important thing in boxing. You guys don't even use it. The second thing that none of you do, you got to go to the body. If you're not jabbing and you're not going to the body, you're not boxing. I mean, every single trainer, and I mean 100% of them, the ones that have already come through and the ones that still will, on their first day, they will make that assessment. Now, over time, they'll realize the jab isn't the same in MMA. It's not the same. These power punches will put you out, not a combination. One punch with the 4-ounce glove. So if I come in here to jab and now you're within range, if I'm throwing jabs just to size him up and he throws a straight, I'm in range, he's in range. Why am I throwing my weak punch when he's in the spot to throw his hard punch? All of a sudden you start to realize why jabs are not as involved in MMA. As a matter of fact, there's been one MMA fight in history that was won and controlled with a jab. Do you guys know what fight that was? It was George St. Pierre versus Koscheck, Part 2. That's right, voice of God. Thank you, Ryan. I'll tell you guys this. Why don't body shots? Why don't we see more of those then? Because we have seen body shots and they sure do hurt. I'll give you a great example. Jon Jones, boom, right to Shogun. I mean, it's a classic moment because Shogun had to stop fighting. As good as Jon was, Shogun was the same thing, but in the tough category. Like if you think, oh my God, Jon is just so good. Okay, Shogun is just so tough. So it was an incredible thing when Shogun had to sit and go, no more punishment. Stop. It's an incredible moment. But you don't see a lot of those. And the reason you don't see those is you need the other guy to cooperate. Right? It's a dance. It's a dance. You have a huge respect for wrestling, guys? Do you have a huge respect for it? Okay, great. If you back away, the wrestler can't take you down. I'm just sharing with you. If you've never wrestled and that guy's the Olympic champion, if you don't stand your ground or come forward, he won't take you down. He can't. Which is why in wrestling that's illegal to do. I mean, I'm just sharing with you. It doesn't matter who the better striker is. If one guy is striking without grabbing you and the other guy grabs you right around the collar, that's called dirty boxing. So if you take on a great boxer who can't do that, and you've never boxed before, but you go out and do that, you will beat him. It is that effective and it is that drastic. So when I make the statement to you, the other guy has to cooperate. He has to. It's a very literal statement. So when Joe Rogan talks about this was the greatest knockout ever, well, it had a couple of ingredients that no other fights had. And even if that's a broad stroke, to have two guys in a mixed format who have an unwritten, unspoken contract. And their contract was, I will stand here if you will stand there. and I will let you throw whatever you want at me, but in exchange, I get to throw whatever I want at you. Do you accept these terms? And they did it. They did it right in front of the world. Right in front of the world. He tells him right here, and Gaethje said, you're playing just my game. So now you have a guy that's cooperating, which allows for a combination that generally would not take place. So now you have the sweet science and you have Western boxing, and it is fully on display, right? A guy can't dip outside in MMA. He cannot dip. He cannot duck. If you dip too much or you duck at all, the guy grabs you in the head and he knees you in the face. If the guy doesn't grab you in the head, he knees you in the face. And I'm just sharing for you, right? I mean, there's guys, Frazier used to fight that way. Frazier be bent over, then he'd come up with that Philly hook and he'd go right back down. He was hard to reach. You'll never see a guy try that crap in MMA. Try that stuff in MMA. I should have put it down. It works in their sport, but I'm sharing with you, right off the bat, this fight has something other fights don't have, which is two guys who agree to throw all the skills that they're allowed to do out the window and just do this. And they agreed at the same moment. And they agreed in one of their worst moments in competitive history because they were exhausted and they were hurt, which means they were vulnerable. And they still agreed to it. Special. That's special. So now you have Max, boom, to the body, boom, to the other side. So Justin, at least there comes out just a little bit. Max pops up, comes to the chin. I mean, you have one of these combinations that you've only seen in boxing. And even when you see it in boxing, you generally only see it up against the ropes, and these guys are right in the center of the octagon. It was a really rare situation. And then you had other ingredients as well. Like, you want to know a great knockout just for shock factor would be when a black belt in jiu-jitsu knocks out the world's best kickboxer, which actually happened in the heavyweight division in the form of Gabriel Gonzaga versus Mirko Cro Cop. Nobody, including Cro Cop, thought Gonzaga could even get his leg that high, let alone would even try it. So then you had that surprise factor, right? That's what I'm talking about. Well, this had the same surprise factor. How come? Well, because you don't sleep Justin Gaethje. You don't even hurt Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje hurts you. And then to the fact that, well, it's not an absolute. You know, like Poirier's done some stuff to him before, you know, and old Eddie Alvarez. And there was a little bit more to it. Those were one-off situations, and they were against guys Justin's size. So one thing that we do know, even if Max can beat him, which he wasn't supposed to, he was the dog, but even if he could beat him, he's not going to knock him out. You guys know that Max was a 2-to-1 dog. Do you understand what that means from a gambling standpoint? It means for every dollar that you bet on Max, you would get back 2. If you bet $100 on Max, he's 2-to-1, you get back 200. It's pretty good. Whereas Gaethje, if you bet $200 and he won, you get your $200 back, of course, but then you get $100 to win. You get half. Okay. Do you know that a knockout was 11-to-1 favoring Max? Do you know it was 17-to-1 to go down in the 4th round? Are you aware of that? For every $100 you bet on Max, if you had knockout in the 4th, you'd have got 17 back. 1,700. It's an interesting situation. Because generally, if a guy was a 2-to-1 dog, it's going to be 6-to-1 for the knockout and the upset. Like, it's going to be one of these things, but it's still tighter. It's still closer. The odds makers were so sure that Max wasn't going to knock him out. I think that added to the drama of it. Not to mention the beauty. Not to mention the fact that they showed it. They showed it. We're going right here. You accept, I accept. Not to mention Max was winning. It was Max's idea. In fact, it was Max's bad idea. Dana even spoke about that. This is a terrible idea by Max. Max is already on his way to fight of the night, which is not his concern. If you want to bring that in, that's 4th, 5th, 6th down on the list. His first concern is to win, to beat Justin Gaethje, to become the BMF champion, to have success at 155 pounds, to become the #1 contender. Like, there's an order to it. To be exciting, it matters, sure, but it's way down here and he's already done it. He already done it at the time that he tells Gaethje, who he knows he's beaten. Max only has to run out the clock. All he has to beat is the clock. But he felt he owed something more to you. He already was the fight of the night, but he thought he owed you to outdo the round that he had just done 5 minutes prior. He thought he owed to you to be the greatest fight you've ever seen, not just the greatest fight that night that happens to have the biggest bonus. He thought he owed to you excitement. He thought he owed to Justin Gaethje one more shot. I'm not going to put you down, Justin. We all know that. I've already hit you 100 times when I was more powerful and I didn't put you down. So I get that. But you just might put me down. And you gave me this opportunity and you brought your belt and you got us this spot. So I'm going to give you one last crack, young man. And I'm going to stand right here. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do and then I'm going to do it. And he did. And he knocked him out. And it is for those reasons. He knew he was fight of the night, and he knew he was going to be BMF champion. And he knew the biggest risk that he could take, and the only way these things were going to slip out of his grasp is if he stood toe-to-toe with the bigger, favored Justin Gaethje. And that's exactly what he did, which is why Joe Rogan is exactly right. It was the greatest knockout in history.